Hi, we're the Clarks, and you're listening to
Bad Dog Daily.
We're the Naughty Dog Strain.
I'm Esteban.
And I'm Sarah, and this is episode 8.
Today's training topic is how to effectively use a camcorder to improve your agility performance. In the second half of the show, just in time for the summer, Dr. Brittany Schaezler of AgilityVet.com returns to talk about heat-related issues and water intoxication.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Advo Agility, specializing in health and wellness, weight management, vibrant energy, and sports performance for the human half of your agility team.
Advo Agility is run by Janae Cunningham, a fellow competitor who understands the demands of agility competition. Visit Janae at advoagility.com. That's ADVO agility.com. There will also be a link to her site on our podcast page. And now, let's talk camcorders.
So we're talking about how to effectively use a camcorder to improve your agility. And I think a lot of people do have camcorders and use them to tape their runs at their weekend trial.
That's definitely the first level of use you get out of a camcorder. You're videotaping special occasions, maybe big national events, the invitational, special runs like your run for mock or another title. And no special angles really required. You're probably going to hand the camcorder off to a friend and say, hey, make sure you get all of the run, maybe a little bit before, maybe a little bit of the run after. And it's more of a video history than anything else. When you take your videotaping to the next level, you're going to be focused on a special area of interest for you, either a down contact performance, maybe a difficult weave entry, or a handling maneuver like a front cross or a threadle. When you hand the camera to someone, you might say, I'd like you to stand over here where you have a very good angle for this one specific thing that I'm really trying to focus on in this run or training session.
And I think that will give you a lot of good information. It lets you look at your timing. But I think even better than focusing in on something at a trial is to take your camcorder to your practice and use it there to look at you and your dog's timing.
That's right. When you think about it, for every front cross you might do at a trial, you're probably doing 50 or 60 of them in practice. And people are very good about videotaping every single one of their runs at a show, but they hardly tape any of their practices.
If you start taping both your runs and your practice, you can also get a sense for if you're handling your dog differently when you run, when you have that extra adrenaline, when you have that extra speed, versus when you practice. And now, here are 4 areas that benefit the most from video analysis.
The first is all about the timing of your handling maneuvers. We like to pause the video right at the moment your dog is preparing to take the jump, because once your dog is in the air, their path is set. Let's say you're trying to get a tight turn at a jump, and you freeze the video right as your dog's taking off. Take a look at your body position. Let's say you are still moving forward, clearly accelerating. Well, your dog's probably going to turn wide there, and the video shows you exactly why. Another example might be a front cross. You freeze the video right as your dog is taking off, and you notice that you haven't yet started your front cross. Your dog will probably turn wide because your front cross cue is late.
Agility is all about timing and about giving our dogs the information they need at the time that they need it. So when we use freeze frame, we can see exactly what information the dog had when he took that jump. The second area that can benefit from video analysis is contact performance. This is especially true of running contacts. I would say that you can't even teach a running contact if you don't have video analysis to be able to slow down the tape and see what your dog is doing. I certainly don't have an eye to be able to see at speed what my dog is doing when they're running full out.
But after you've reviewed a lot of video of yourself and your dog doing the running contacts, I think that'll help you develop an eye for it. Another way to analyze your handling, most often in practice, is to compare 2 different ways of handling the same sequence. So you might have a 3-jump sequence and you do it with a rear cross the first time and a front cross the second time. You can slow the video down and either run them side by side, create an overlay, or just time both sequences and you'll know which one's faster.
And the fourth area is jumping. This is especially critical if your dog has any sort of jumping issue. I've had a dog in the past that was a very bad early jumper and took down a lot of bars. and I used video analysis and especially slowing things down to watch my dog striding and see where he was taking off for the jump and put together a program to try to fix that. So videotaping there is key, and again, the slow motion really helps you analyze that. And finally, videotaping your runs is going to be a must if you decide to take any kind of online course that has feedback. All of these courses are going to require you to upload video of your dog running a particular sequence or practicing a certain skill so that you can get feedback on that. So as those courses become more common, if you want to be a part of that, you're going to need to learn how to do video analysis. There are also psychological benefits that we can get from recording our training sessions. It can be very helpful to look back over time and see the progress that you've made on a particular skill that you've been working on. I found this to be true when I was doing 2x2 weave pulls. It's very exciting, very motivating to go back and see how I got from point A to point B. When we had Daisy Peel on last week talking about mental management, she also talked about the psychological benefits and the mental management benefit of putting together a highlight reel, a video with music of all of your best moments in many different runs that you can watch to get yourself psyched up and motivated in your agility training. Now, you can do a lot of this right there on your camcorder. You can immediately open up your viewfinder of your camcorder, and on most of them, you can pause and slow motion right there on the camera. But then you can also transfer that video to your computer, where you have a lot more flexibility in what you can do in terms of freezing the frame and slowing things down.
It's really hard to use a camcorder to analyze your run, even though you're going to try and do this at most trials. I'm sure we've all had the experience of 2 or 3 people trying to squeeze around a tiny little camcorder screen to watch a run. And using the slow buttons and pause buttons on a camcorder to see a very specific move on a teeny tiny screen is really, really hard to do. When you're looking at a large number of repetitions, say 20 or 30 repetitions from a practice, it's easiest to upload that video later and look at it on a big screen, analyze it on your computer, and then get a really good sense of what really happened at that practice session.
And we know that a lot of people aren't 100% comfortable with uploading their videos and doing any sort of editing on the computer. So we're going to create several how-to videos that we'll post over the next couple of weeks that will show you exactly how to use Windows Movie Maker, which is a simple program we like to use, to do some basic editing and some freeze frame and slow down of your video. So check back. We'll have a link on the podcast page to these how-to videos as we put them up. If you don't already have a camcorder, the prices have come way down. We just recently bought a new camcorder for under $200. And then actually Esteban broke that camcorder and we bought the exact same camcorder again. This was just 3 months ago. So we'll put a link on our website to the camcorder we use. It has slow motion playback right there on the camera, and it has a really easy way of uploading videos. But whatever camcorder you use, they really have become much more affordable now and also very small and easy to take around.
I thought you broke that camera.
That was not me. In fact, you have broken our last 2 camcorders. There's also one other thing that I wanted to mention about videotaping, and that's the dark side of videotaping. Once you get addicted to videotaping your training sessions, you can reach a sort of paralysis where you feel like you can't train if you don't have the video camera, or you can't train if you don't have the time to do your super slick editing and to add your music and to make a really production ready video for everybody to see on Facebook. And while videotaping can really help you, you can't let it prevent you from training if you don't have the time to do the editing, or if you don't even have your camera available to you because you left it at somebody's house or whatever. So just make sure that it's working for you and not against you. And you don't have to post every video you make to a public YouTube or post it on Facebook. You can upload the video to your computer, get the information you need, and you never have to post it for anybody else to see. But get that information that you need to take your training to the next level. And now we have Dr. Brittany Schaezler back on the show from agilityvet.com. Welcome back, Brittany.
Thanks for having me back.
You're welcome. We wanted to talk today about heat-related health issues in dogs since it's the heat of the summer. Let's start with heat stroke. I've actually had a student recently whose dog collapsed. He was training before class and his dog collapsed, and the dog was fine, but it just highlights the fact that this is a problem that can really affect agility dogs because we do continue to train through the heat of the summer and we need to watch out for our dogs. So what should we be looking for with heat stroke?
So heat stroke happens because dogs are really, really bad at cooling themselves off. They don't sweat. And so the only way they cool themselves off is by panting. And in the summer, especially somewhere like Houston where you have really high humidity, that's a really cruddy way to cool yourself off with evaporative cooling by panting. So when dogs are not able to cool themselves, the things you might see: panting, weakness, collapse, stumbling or falling. Some dogs will vomit or have diarrhea, but typically they'll just be a little bit vacant, a little bit weak. Just you look at them and they are not acting right. They're not responding like their normal selves.
All right. So if that happens, what should be the first thing that we do?
The first thing you should do is find a hose or a baby pool and dunk your dog in it. Really, you want to get sort of their underside, so their feet, their chest, their belly, the area around their tail. Those are really the most important areas. You're not going to do a ton, but those are usually where the thinnest hair is. Stick them somewhere cool. Before there was air conditioning in cars, they said roll down your windows and drive, but that's stupid now that we have AC. So
Right.
it's like, yeah, let's do that. So dunking them in water to sort of start the cooling process, and then best case scenario would be sticking them in air conditioning. So ideally someplace like your car where you can have cold air blowing on them. If for some reason that's not an option, having a fan blowing will help cool them off. But you need to start the cooling process. And if your dog has had a heat stroke and they're weak, they're not responding, they're having bloody diarrhea, it's imperative to get them to an emergency clinic right away. The problem with heat stroke isn't the temperature, what temperature they reach. Usually dogs are going to be somewhere like 106 to 109 if they're having a heat stroke, where normal temperature is like 100 to 102. The problem is how long they remain at that temperature. The longer their body is at a high temperature, the more damage that's occurring inside. And that's what you need to get them cooled off as fast as possible, and then go assess that damage and treat them supportively for that damage. Because once it's happened, there's nothing you can do except to try to get them through that crisis.
All right, so the most important thing is to cool them off. And hopefully, if we just notice that our dog is acting a little off or is a little weak, and we get them cooled off and they bounce right back and are acting normal, then we've probably averted any serious harm at that point.
Really, the human half of the team is supposed to be the smart half. So if your dog is starting to slow down, starting to maybe avoid like sitting in the shade, things like that, that's probably your first clue that it's time to take a break. But yeah, if your dog just seems a little weak, you cool him off, you put him inside, 30 minutes later, they're 100% normal, then yeah, they're probably going to be fine. But if there is ever a doubt, you need to get them to a vet, because dogs can and do die from this frequently in the summer.
So one thing that I'm unsure about is we've always given our dogs ice water when we take them out to agility practice in the summer. But I've read blog posts about what to do in the summertime that say that you should not give your dog ice water. Is that just a matter of just kind of the difference in temperature between the dog and the water? Is it a matter of shock? I mean, what's the right thing to do there?
I really personally don't feel like it makes a big, huge difference whether the water has ice or not. Personally, I want my water to be cool, and a lot of times room temperature water, if you're outside at a dog show in the summer, is not. It's sort of lukewarm. So I'll put a few cubes in there just to cool it off, but I'm not giving a big bucket of ice with a little bit of water. I mean, if you're working hard and they drink a bunch of ice water, they could vomit, they could get cramps. Honestly, do I think it makes a huge difference? No. It's not going to be a great way to cool your dog either, because they're not going to drink enough water to cool their insides.
All right. So the best thing we can do for our dogs is just to prevent this from happening. We personally try to wet our dogs down before there's an issue. We've often run black dogs, which suffer more in the heat, at least during the daytime. Our dogs' coats would be physically hot to touch on the black dogs. So we were always extra careful with them and with large breeds. And we would wet them down before we ever even started rather than waiting for them to get hot. The best course of action is just prevention.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, wetting them down before you start, wetting them down during, again, focusing on, sort of chest, legs, belly, because that's where you're going to have the most effect. Doing it repeatedly, I have long-coated dogs, and if I wet them down at the beginning, within 45 minutes, they're dry again. And they dry pretty darn quickly when they're working hard and it's hot outside. So, taking a break and making sure that you've still got that moisture down there. The other big things are making sure your dog has plenty of fresh water, watching when you train. So try to avoid that heat of the day in the afternoon, like 5 o'clock, where it seems to be the hottest. Short sessions really help, and that's good for dog training in general. There's cool pads that I bought one at Nationals this year. I was really impressed with. And there's some cool coats out there that seem to work, especially if you have a black dog. If you're working outside and you have a black dog, you really do get that direct sunlight effect on their skin. So there are reflective coats as well that I think make a bigger difference for those types of dogs than the effect of a cool coat where you're just trying to cool their skin. I think just reflecting some of the sun can definitely help black dogs almost more than any of them. The biggest thing is just listen to your dog. I know my guys always want to go, but if I'm resetting something up and I look around and they're laying under the A-frame because it's the only shade out there, it's time for a break. They don't do that if they're not hot and working really hard. So just realizing if your dog is starting to slow down, starting to make mistakes they don't normally make, it may just be because they're really hot and having a hard time focusing.
I think a big danger can be when we're out and we're running with our dogs, we're in the heat too, and we feel it and we get hot and we take breaks. I think a real danger comes in when you're doing something like throwing a ball where you're doing nothing and your dog is doing all the running, or say practicing a running dog walk where again you're kind of standing off to the side and your dog is doing the work. Those are the times when you may not realize how much work your dog has done.
For sure in those situations, especially the ball throwing. I see it where people go and they throw the ball 50 times, and you may be able to throw the ball 50 times in December, but in, July in Houston, it's probably not a good idea.
And some of these dogs, they will just go. They want to please you and they will just go, go, go. They won't listen to their own bodies. I think especially, your border collies, and for ball throwing, your retrievers. They will just go after that. It doesn't matter. We've had our dog have worn down pads and we didn't realize it because she would just still go after that ball. So we got to really watch our dogs and take care of them ourselves.
Definitely. It's our responsibility to be the smart half of the team.
All right. So one other heat-related issue that I wanted to talk about, because I personally had never heard of this until it happened to a friend of ours, and that's water intoxication. So my understanding is that you can actually become sick, human or dog, can become sick from drinking too much water. What is that all about? How does that happen? And what are the signs? And how much does it really take for that to happen to a dog?
Well, first off, water toxicity definitely happens, but it is not common. I think we probably see it maybe a little more with agility dogs because we're dealing with border collies and they're a little bit more active. Maybe they're a little bit more manic. So, they're just a little more compulsive, a little more likely to drink water. And the cases I can think of are it's a hose or a sprinkler. So it's something where they're sort of excited, they're grabbing and biting at water. And those are the cases I've read about in pet dogs as well, where it's a dog that runs out and tries to attack the sprinkler for an hour. The reality is it is not a common problem. Most vets will never, ever, ever see a case of water toxicity. It's just not a super common thing to happen. Aside from the agility dog, it tends to be something maybe a little bit more common in smaller dogs because it's easier for them to get overloaded relative to their body weight. So what happens is dog ingests a huge amount of water and basically their system gets overloaded with water and everything gets diluted out. So you have this huge amount of water water, and now all of your concentrations are off. Your electrolytes end up low, especially sodium, but it's not a low sodium that's causing the problem. It's just the fact that everything in your system is diluted. It messes up that balance. The biggest sign of problems is you usually get neurologic issues. So weakness, unable to stand. Your dogs may vomit because they've drank so much water. You're getting those neurologic effects because of swelling in the brain. It can start out as weakness and stumbling and not being able to stand. It can progress to respiratory distress, coma, death easily. Because unless you get rid of that excess water, and that's the hard part. And a lot of these guys, it comes in very vague. It looks like some type of a toxin. And our first response to a toxin is always get an IV catheter, start fluids. And that's not what you need to do in this case.
It sounds like a pretty scary thing, but also not very common. So if my dog collapses, I know they've drunk a lot of water and I'm concerned about this. I guess I should just bring that to the attention of my vet, let them know that this is a possibility, a concern for me, and then what would they do?
Yeah, so definitely bring it up, let them know, we went for a hike and we walked in the river for 2 hours, whatever that case is, and let them know, I am concerned about water toxicity. The signs are sort of vague, so they look like a lot of things. They look like a lot of different toxicities, but what you want is for them to run that blood work, and the blood work is going to show their electrolytes are going to be really, really whacked out. Their sodium should be low, probably their potassium, some other things, and that's your first big clue that may be what's going on, and that's really all you can do in that situation.
As the patient or the storyteller for the patient, it's all about the presentation, and this happens in people. And just like Dr. Schaezler says, headaches, confusion, seizures, coma, cerebral edema, death, those are kind of late stage findings. When someone comes in and they're not feeling well, they've been vomiting, they seem a little confused or lethargic, you might not be thinking acute water intoxication. But there are elements of the story for a dog that would be, he was playing in the sprinkler for, all afternoon. For a person might come in and say, this guy had random urine drug testing today. And one of the things people will do to try and beat the test is drink a large amount of water. And there's actually been reported fatalities in the medical literature over that sort of thing. So if you show up, I think, at your vet and you give them, if you paint a picture for them and it includes those elements, they'll be more likely to consider it, move it up higher on their differential and look for it.
Definitely. I mean, I don't know about human medicine, but, in veterinary medicine, we always say, if you hear hooves, think horses, not zebras. And water toxicity really is a zebra. So you really have to be the one to say, they really were drinking a lot of water. I'm really worried about this. Realize that there are many, many, many more things that see every day that cause those exact same signs. And so it's going to be something where you've got to get that blood work done, and that's going to be your indicator. But definitely bring it up so that it is on that list of things that may be going on. But again, realize this is not something that vets are seeing every afternoon. So it is something just to be aware of and to bring it up. And if, you're worried about it and your vet runs blood work and all the electrolytes look good, that's probably not what's going on. Maybe they're right. Maybe it is something they ate when you were hiking that, that might be toxic. So you need to have a vet you can trust and listen to, and even in those emergency situations.
Well, thank you so much, Brittany, for helping us out with these summertime issues. We've been hearing about different cases from different people, and we just wanted to bring some of that information to our listeners.
No problem. I was glad to come on.
Visit us at baddogagility.com and look for the big orange button on the right-hand side if you're interested in introducing our podcast.
We also have plenty of training articles, and we would love to hear your comments.
And sign up for our free newsletter on our site so you never miss an article.
Happy training!